Hi, everybody. My name's Evan Mulch. I'm the field coordinator for the John Birch Society in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. And I have with me Wayne Morrow, our national field director for the John Birch Society. And he has many more years of experience in the society than me. And so I always look forward to getting his knowledge on what it takes to be an effective John Birch Society member. Anyways, welcome, Wayne.
Thank you. Thank you, Evan. Appreciate it.
And what it takes to be an effective member of the John Birch Society. I was just on the phone with new members, and we were talking about their community and what it's going to take to get their community to latch on to these beliefs that the John Birch Society teaches, which are basically the Americanist beliefs of the founding fathers and of what's contained in the Declaration of Independence. We know that the country was never perfect, but we are united together in the society to return to the same values and to make this country as close to perfect as possible, so that people can live in peace and make the money they need to provide for their families. And justice is always, we want justice to always be available for people, because that should be always required, that there's justice for those who have issues while living in this country. Anyways, Wayne, what first comes to your mind when it comes to the idea of being effective in the John Birch Society?
Well, that's a good question. Well, first of all, being knowledgeable is really important. And there's lots of ways you can do that. You can be someone who's been a member for a couple of months or maybe years. So, being armed with the information, because there's so much disinformation out in the airways, it'd be newspapers or televisions. And, the Birch Society has prided itself on lots of tools. So we have, you see behind me, countless books. If you're a reader, for references, we have magazines, the New American Magazine. We have Congressman's Scorecard for the Freedom Index. And we also came out with these things as tools. For example, the dangers of democratic socialism. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this. It has a little QRD code in the back. The deep state war in America. We did Americanism versus globalism. These are really interesting talking points you give to someone, very inexpensive to make. Freedom and the cure, that current COVID-19, we're all locked down. That's not the answer. And what's probably coming at us is the electoral college is under attack. These are good door openers to develop a conversation. But probably the best thing for me, in my experience, has shown overview of America. Because most people don't even understand, as Evan knows, as we travel together, even not together, is that people don't understand Americanism. So they don't even know they're a republic. They think we're a democracy. So I always find that to be the best tool to start with, having a DVD in hand and give it to someone who wants to know a little bit about what we do, or they can direct them to the YouTube video. They can watch that. And that's a good basis to start your conversation. Most people, to my experience, are totally unaware that we're a republic and what a door opener that is. So you have to give credibility. I know that people would say, hey, this is all nonsense going on in the news and we're all being lied to. But just settle down a little bit, start with the basics, then you can build from them. Because you're really an educator. And how you do the education is really important. And it's step by step, not just dump your bucket on them and hope they pick something up. But we have lots of tools. And I can tell you currently, our growth of the Birch Society, I just gave you some stats, and then I can answer some questions that you may have, is their subscription sales are up 60% in the month of May and April. And I assume June is going to be the same or more. And our dues, membership dues in May were double they were over 3 years. And what does that mean for membership growth? It's moving straight up this way. And they may say, is that because of superior leadership? No. Is that because of wonderful tools? Absolutely. It's because it's a sign of the times. And what Mr. Welch wrote about in 1958, he was kind of prophetic in saying, if this happens, this is the plan, and now we're watching it unfold. But people really want to know what's going on. And to your point, Evan, we have some solutions and answers to what those words really have, because they really want to know, because they know they're being lied to.
Well, just a reminder for everybody on this, there's 25 people attending. If you have a question, just raise your hand. There's a button there where you can raise your hand, or you can ask the question in the Q&A section.
Yep.
How much does it cost to be an effective member of the John Birch Society? Do you need to be middle class, or do you need to be wealthy, Wayne?
Well, I've seen the whole spectrum, from someone who just about can pay dues and someone who is wealthy. You know, it doesn't make a difference, because freedom is a measurement of your economics, is basically a lot more involved with freedom. I mean, what good is your 401k account if you got $2 million and all of a sudden you lose your country? Where are you going to spend it on? How are you going to spend it? Who really cares? And so I don't think that's really a defining moment. It's really the willingness to defend your freedom and know that what you have is under attack, severe attack. The enemy's at the door banging on it right now. And if people don't see that, I said, you know, time to clean off your glasses, or buy a pair so you can see. But really, you see it all around, and people are fearful. And I always tell them, well, let's understand really what's going on out there, because it's a psychological game. And then the fear factor changes then to an action factor, which we do, put people to work. There's more good people in the United States than there is evil people. That's what I see.
One of the keys in the John Birch Society is organization. We're known for having chapters. Mm-hmm. And I was on the phone this morning with new members, and they're wanting to know how to start a chapter.
Right.
And they can't make the decision right now whether they're going to start a chapter as it's normally done, or if they're going to start a business, a professional chapter.
Right.
But there's multiple options for members mm-hmm. to lead an organization. We don't recommend people start as Lone Rangers. They can start as a support your local police committee right away. They don't even really have to form a chapter right away if support your local police is the message they want to deliver. Mm-hmm. What goes into organizing? What do you see as being the best organizers we have in the John Birch Society? What do they do differently that others don't do?
Yeah, good question. Well, how to really start a chapter, and going back in my time, is that I showed Overview of America back then. And I've got people of like mind, 2 or 3, 4 people, much like you and I did in South Carolina for business chapters. Get a couple of people either in your house for coffee or in a coffee shop, where you can still do that. And ask questions and show them some basic information. And gathering like-minded people, because at the end of the day, most people don't want to feel they're alone, and they're not alone. And the thing is that they don't know you exist. And so our job is to reach out to people that we know in the community and get them to know that there is hope. And there's a reason behind to see the madness we see today. And that when you get enough of those people, you need 8 of them to form a chapter, then you have an organized unit. And that organized unit then has movie nights, information action meetings, and you grow from that. So you can have folks at just ordinary chapter. You mentioned business and professional chapter. Those are business people get together. And you would think more business people would be more anxious to form a BNP chapter, because their businesses are totally under threat. Mm-hmm. And in the way it's going, their business will be gone. So they have a lot invested financially and history. So there's 2 different kinds of chapters. So we have both in the Birch Society. And they all have the goal in mind of keeping the United States as a free country, and what it was stood for and how it began. But you have to do something about it. It's not magic. You have to work. Mm-hmm. It's not magical. And it's not that hard, because people just want to know what's happening. So anyway, it takes a little energy out of a couple of people to invite people, to educate them. And then, as you know, we have a pretty proven plan on how to put people to work and educate. Remember, it's about education, really what's going on. That's really important.
Yeah, we're all becoming professors, but we don't have university salaries.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when you educate the community, then you elect constitutional minded representatives. I'll give you an example. People always complain about Congress people. Oh, they're awful. They're the lefties, whatever it is, and they're useless. They're neocons. I always ask the question, well, how did they get elected? I mean, they only had one vote, but somebody voted for them in. And I say your problem is not them. It's a reflection upon your neighborhood. So your task now is educate your neighborhood to have good constitutional-minded people. That's the problem. The congressperson is a symptom of the problem.
Right. And it's important. A lot of people do join the John Birch Society and they don't even know who their congressman is. I've experienced that this week, and that just goes to show how Americans have become, most Americans were never trained to do that sort of thing. And we need to train the youth to do that in the future, to actually be involved in having discussions with their congressman, with their state senator, their state representative, even with their sheriff. We have a homeschooling program, and Boyd Parks asks a question here. Can the John Birch Society help with homeschooling? And I'm going to try to relate this to what this discussion is about. And because we're trying to help people learn to be more effective in the John Birch Society. To be effective, we have to plant seeds for the future. Karl Marx, his plan was to go after the youth, and if he could get the youth in the first few years of their life, he could make them Marxists the rest of their lives. How important it is for a John Birch Society member to promote our homeschooling options that are available to us?
Yeah, well, now more than ever, right? I mean, we read in the local newspaper that schools were not going to open up for in-person classes. So now they're going to be online. Well, guess what? Freedom Project's online. And so that's perfect. Matter of fact, I call unintended consequences of the pandemic is keeping kids at home. And we've been talking about homeschooling for a long time, and parents seem to like some of that. They get to know the kids and they're involved. And we're seeing the homeschool movement grow in the United States. I mean, you had Alex Newman on here who could speak to them a little more than me for current information, but we also see the increase, rapid increase of people enrolling in Freedom Project in the Birch Society. If people here on the call know that we even have a homeschool, but there are other homeschool opportunities in the United States, but it's growing because they're tired of children coming out to be Marxists when they're all finished, including universities, by the way. I just want to say that you asked me about knowing your congressman. This came out, you should have had some of these, Evan, the Freedom Index. This is the congressman's scorecard. And it talks about how your congressman's voting, and you should have this handy. And there's a new thing we're working on here in the next month or so or sooner. It tells you how your congressman's doing against constitutional voting. And most people don't, like you said, don't know who the congressman is, let alone how they voted. And I just want to add about activating the membership. There's two ways that my congressman told me how to communicate with them. Is by phone calls in the local office. Phone calls have a lot more impact than emails. Emails you get a robo answer most of the time, but they like phone calls. Phone call the local office. Washington office sometimes busy, but I call local offices. And then go visit with them, a couple of members visit them and talk about some of the issues that are in here. Why did you vote this way? Why did you vote that way? That's one. The other way is Twitter. So all you technos out there like to use Twitter. They tell me congressmen read their Twitter account on their phone when they're in session. They're looking at this here. So if you want a direct impact your congressperson, you can use Twitter. I even do it to other people, not my congressman. I said, to vote against this, support this. And it seems to have some impact. I mean, I communicate with Tom Massey all the time. And he's in Kentucky. And he needs encouragement, and I do that. So I challenge you, phone calls, Twitter. It's all about communication. You can activate. You can complain about your congressperson, only we can change it. If you want to keep them in line, you got to contact them and tell them, hey, we're paying attention. By the way, one phone call represents anywhere from 200 to 300 voters because nobody calls. If you get 30 phone calls, they have a meeting about it. Imagine that. So isn't that the good news is that no one's calling. They're all complaining, but no one's calling.
Okay, we have 26 people on this. So all of you can call my congressman after this webinar. How about that?
And also your state representatives too, not just your congressman.
Bonnie Vals has a question here. She asks, is there a way we can be doing webinars ourselves, and how?
Well, go
And
ahead. I
she's,
mean, give it a try.
yeah. Well, yeah, members of the John Birch Society should be using the technology that's available. And this is a great way to organize people. Right now with this webinar, we have about 30 people here, and everybody here is learning from members of the John Birch Society, and you could easily use this on your own. You could invite me, or if I'm your field coordinator, I think everybody on this is in my territory, but you can invite me to be your guest, or you can invite your congressman to be your guest, and just use this technology to get to know people better in your area.
Right.
Yeah, so yes, please use it, and I
I
can help.
suggest something maybe a little easier at first, is the Zoom meetings. Well, Evan and I know last year we did teleconferences with our leadership within our areas. Then we morphed into the Zoom meetings, which are pretty easy. It's limited in time if you don't want to pay, but it's a good way to get your local people that you want to know to see them and show a movie or whatever. It may be very convenient. There's no excuses not to participate in a Zoom meeting, because what excuse is, you're operating out of your home. You don't have to drive, go through bad weather. I can tell you that the meetings that we've had, virtual meetings, have been very well attended around the United States, because people want to know what's happening, and it's easy. So I recommend a Zoom meeting versus a webinar of the people you want to reach out to. And then Evan could tell you how to run a movie, like you show overview of America on a Zoom meeting. It's not hard to do. But
Yeah, we'll
it's
actually
a
run
good
it
format.
when this is over with. We'll run the movie so everybody can see it if you haven't seen it before. That's
Right.
very easy to do. Just a reminder for everybody that's on this, if you do want to ask a question, either raise your hand, or you can ask your question in the Q&A section here. That's the both ways. If you're connected to your computer, raise your hand, because then I can unmute you, and you can speak and ask your question. Trying to look at a question here. Okay, when it comes to recruiting, there's lots of other organizations, and of course, we're not asking Republicans to leave the Republican Party and join the John Birch Society. What we want, and the same goes for Democrats too, although I don't think there's one Democrat in my territory that's a member of the John Birch Society, but we want everybody of every organization reading our material and getting their education from us. What strategies do you know, or can you think of, that could help people with their recruitment?
Okay. Well, I mentioned a couple of them. Is we have these little inexpensive cards that we pass out, and these are topical. That's a good way. The other thing I found out is the New American Magazine. It comes out every 2 weeks, and this one happens to be very topical. What's behind the riots? So I've gone out and said, hey, we have this magazine, you might want to read it. And people said, this is really good. Can I subscribe to it? I said, yeah, sure you can. And it's a good talking tool to talk through this. We have packed lots of articles, or you might want to review this with someone. And this is basically taking the news that they're bombarded with, and gives them the truth. You know, people are looking, as I mentioned earlier, they're looking for an answer. They know there's something going on. They want to know what's really happening. So we have the information to do that. And then it progresses into the next step. It's amazing, as I talk to successful people in the United States, is that they just don't have a fear of just talking to people. You know, and why are you a member of the Birch Society? I always ask the question, why are you a member? Is it because you got nothing to do one afternoon? Is that you want to preserve our country, our freedom, for not only for yourself, but your family and future generations? Of course. I think people have to understand why you're even involved. It's not to make money selling a DVD for $1, that's for sure. But I think they have to understand the reason why you're a member. But as I said earlier, people want to know what's going on. They know this is not normal. And they know this is something unusual, and their Bill of Rights are being trampled on, if they know what they are. And then you say, how do you then get involved? Do you know your local congressman? Do you know your local sheriff official? Do you know your city officials? Do they know where you stand? Do you know how to talk to them? And educate them. I mean, it's amazing the lack of contact about the people they complain about. Very little contact, but they complain about them all day long. That's what I see. But the effective ones actually meet them, and now they have a voice. And believe me, some of the officials listen to the voice because they need education as well, probably more than anybody.
John L. Rains asked the question. She says, my biggest problem is not how to educate, but how to motivate people to act. What are your strategies to motivate people to do? Being willing is not enough. Having knowledge is not enough.
Right.
But how do we get people to act?
Right. Good question. That's what I said originally. It's the emotional aspect. You have to get people emotionally engaged. So why are you a member? You have to tell them that. They really have to understand why you're a member. I mean, they'll have to feel the emotion of why you are, and they have to believe that what you are. I mean, I have a feel for my family. And I don't want to live in a socialist communist country. We'll lose everything. They'll take our house. They'll take your monies that you've saved. They've told us they'll do that. You understand that's what's at risk here. They'll take it all away. And once people know the emotion, you're trying to preserve that. It doesn't take hard. You're not got everyone to understand that, but the ones that are will be propelled to really get behind it and help, because some don't really believe the problem's that serious. That's the problem. So it's not everyone you're going to talk to is going to say, "Oh, I got it," and the scales fall from their eyes. But you will find the right people. It only takes 3 to 5% to make a difference, correct? The 5%ers. So don't get excited if 2 people said, "Thanks so much, you get out of here." Sometimes it takes time for people to digest it. But I give them the tools to read, to think about it. And some people, all from Missouri, you got to show me. But it's a process. But I give the emotional reasons why I'm a member. They think you want to sell a magazine or join a club. It's like golf or darts or whatever it is. The answer is not, this is not that at all. You have to do that. And I direct them to our website, the JBS website, or the New American website. And as you all know, or should know, we have lots of videos on a lot of different topics. And sometimes people go down that lane. They need to be educated by visual videos, and they want to be able to understand really what's happening. So the answer is no one answer, but I always give them the emotional appeal why I'm a member. They need to understand that. That's really important. I don't know if I answered that question, but I hope I did.
I think you did a great job. Andy Wyndham has a question. I'm going to unmute him, and he can ask the question. Go ahead, Andy.
He's still muted.
I'm pressing I pressed the unmute
You
button.
now?
Yeah, I can hear you, Andy.
It's not a question, okay? It is a suggestion, okay? I spoke to the county council last night. I spoke for the last 4 weekends, okay, at the flea market at a table, okay? The best way that I know is to allow people to sign a petition, okay? They signed the petition, okay? You know that you're in agreement with them, okay? And then you tell them, okay, who you are, okay, and why you're here. I'm here to expose a conspiracy, okay? Please listen carefully, for what I'm about to tell you is a matter of life and death. This gets their attention, okay? This is my appeal to people. This is my emotional connect with them, okay?
That's right.
Is that understandable?
Absolutely. So exactly, you answered it. You actually fell along with my question was you need to show the emotional aspect and tell folks it's real. I mean, if they watch the daily news or watch on the streets, if they don't understand what we've been talking about for 50, 60 years, it's banging on their door, they're totally blind. But don't get frustrated because there may be 5 other people around the corner who want to hear it. So don't get stuck with them. Move on to someone else. Don't get frustrated banging on the same door. And sometimes those people come around, but they're there. The people are there. As I travel the U.S., they're there. That's a good way to go at it. You gave them emotional appeal while you're involved.
Question from Jason Kendrick. How do we respond to the violent mobs of anarchists plaguing the country without being branded as a racist? And I think this is very important for members who are trying to be effective, because we will be called racist for what we're doing, because that's what the left does. How how would you answer this? How would you answer this question? I mean, that's just what you get called today. If you're promoting Americanism, you get called a racist.
Sure.
So how do you respond to those who want to brand us as that, though?
Yeah, well, we have some great articles. You know, the worst racists in America. You know, go through this. It goes and it actually goes through unwinds what it means. But that's just propaganda newspeak to shut your voice down. You know, from a biblical perspective, there's no such thing as racism. That's just a tool. We wrote a book in the past about that with Alan Stang. About civil unrest and racism. What I always say is that, you know, the BLM movement, you know, who funds it is Thousand Currents, but that's all now a Maoist communist front. It's nothing to do with that whole movement has been hijacked by the Maoists. Look at the television set when you see people in the street rioting. 80-90% of them are white people. And they're all screaming and yelling, but you find who they are. They're Maoists, they're Marxists, they're Antifa people, they're revolutionary. It's about the revolution. It's got nothing to do with racism. And they're using the black folks as a vehicle to drive the wedge. That's what it is. I had some say, you know, this is what I'm for. You know, you don't have that now. You're being led by Marxists. And if you understand Marxism or communism, you're going to either going to be the oligarchy, then the poor. There's no middle class anymore. But so that's why I address it. They can't define their terms. They're just emotional screaming yellers. We got some really good articles, by the way, in our current What's Behind the Riots. It addresses that. But look who's actually rioting. You find out they're white Marxists, not black people.
Mm-hmm.
Not the ones I see anyway.
Yeah, there's lots of ways to respond to that, and the more you get involved in the John Birch Society, and the more you read our New American Magazine and Bulletin, the more ways you learn on how to respond to that. And you, as the individual member of the John Birch Society, you learn eventually what's your most effective way of answering that. Because the first time you answer that, you may not answer that in a great, you know, in a very effective way. You may learn that you wish you'd have done your homework a little bit better before answering that question. And that's just part of being American right now, is that you have to be as equipped as possible with the facts so that you can respond right away to questions like this. Like I said earlier, a lot of people are on this call. You know, if you got a question, ask it in the Q&A section. We're not getting a lot in the chat area, so if you do want to ask it in the chat area, go ahead and put it in that area. If you want to raise your hand, you can raise your hand, and you can personally ask your question as long as you have a microphone hooked up. Wayne, Andy Wyndham earlier made a statement, and he puts together a lot of Birch booths. He goes to these flea markets. He's done a lot of gun shows. You know, it costs very little to be at these events, and you usually can make your money back if you're asking people for donations at the event to help, so they can help you pay for your booth. What do you think it's? I mean, one member of the John Birch Society on his own can run a chapter and do a Birch booth, but what do you see as the characteristics needed to be effective at running a Birch booth? What do you want what should the outcome be when you're running a Birch booth at an event?
Yeah, well, again, having relevant current information. This is, again, I always, you can get, as you know, ample supply of these back issue ones very inexpensively. So this is a good tool because it's not offensive and it's current news. One of the things I've seen, though, in my past, and even currently, is that people come to our information table. I call it the truth table, and we never know who they are because they never take their name down and their contact information. So I have the sign-up sheet. Hey, you know my name is, who are you? And the reason why I need your name, because I might want to send you some more information. You may have a question of mine. I need to know who I'm talking to. And if they're not interested, then you're really not, you're wasting your time. You're not going to go anywhere with them. You may, but probably not. So that's one thing I find out. Current information, but again, you find out who they are. And if they want more information, you find out maybe they're really good at, they really want to join an organization to do something active and do proactively. And I find that's really important. It's nice to go out in the street, and wave these out and do this, but if you don't know who they are in meetings, it's a shame. We have lots of Trump rallies and all, and these are great little tools. In the back here, by the way, is a lot of white space, That's where you put your contact information. You write in a pen, contact me, I'm really interested. How else can I do that? And that's always a missing link. You think people would say, oh yeah, I'll give you a call. They don't know how to get back to you. So that's one of the key things that it's really important to capitalize on the interest level. So I think that's something to think through.
I'm about 50 pages into the new book we have on China that's written by our CEO. And while reading this, I kept thinking to myself, there's never an end to learning in the John Birch Society. And I run into so many people who think that they have the answer. We run into it a lot at the state level where people are like, we just need to call an Article 5 convention that'll solve our problems. Or we just need a fair tax. There's these silver bullet solutions that people think are the answer. We just need to expose, that we're being taxed too much, or that there's too many regulations, or we just need free markets. Free markets will solve everything. I think that's one of the benefits of being a John Birch Society member that so many could capitalize on, is that the learning is endless. I mean, if you enjoy learning in college, now I guess it depends on where you went. You may have gone to a leftist university at the time. You may not have enjoyed learning there, but if you enjoy learning, if you have this romance of education, as our founder Robert Welch called it, the society is always making you think harder about what's taking place, and it's equipping you with more information on how to speak to people with what's going on in current events. How do you, when it comes to your day-to-day activities, Wayne, how do you juggle all the education? Or how do you recommend people juggle the education? Because we're getting 2 magazines a week, we're getting 1 bulletin a month, we're getting usually another book every month recommended to us that we need to read. How do you juggle all that?
Yeah, that's why you got some gray hair going on. Yeah, I also juggle 20 of you, right? So that's why we've got people all over the United States. Well, a good question is that I find it kind of topical. What does that mean? You mentioned a note about, let's talk about support your local police. Our local policemen are under fire. So I kind of zero in on that because people want to know that. And I want to be able to address my neighbors about what that means. So I focus on that topic. It may be, we have a congressman that's really gone off the rails and not voting correctly. So I hone in on the congressman's voting record and making sure that the people around here visit the congressman and make sure they stay in line. Or a good question someone asked about, you guys are all a bunch of racists. What does that mean? Tell me what that means. You guys are far right, and you know that in the political spectrum, that's not correct. Far right are anarchists. So it depends on the question drives me to the issues, which I need either to have a good answer for or supply them information for. So, it's going to vary from day to day. And over a period of a month, your spectrum grows. And so all of a sudden you find a pattern, what people want to ask, is our United States really a racist country, or really a republic? Are you guys far right? It becomes repetitive after a while because they're responding to mass media. That's what I do. But it hones in lately about support your local police. And I go to the sites, like the websites, the literature, to give me more information, so I'm a little bit more in depth in how I can respond. So that's what drives me to the information.
Victoria Bayer has a question. Where do you get the China book? Is it in the JBS bookstore already?
Yes.
My computer doesn't have a micro camera, so I can't ask the question. But Thank you, Victoria, for asking this. She said she's been a member for over 10 years. I'm going to share my screen here so she can see where it's at here, and so everybody else can too. So if you go to shopjbs.org, if you just scroll to the bottom of the page, It's
Yep,
right
there
there
it is.
for $7.95.
Yep.
If you buy 50 of them, you get them for $2.95 each.
Mhm.
So
Hey, by
it's
the way, Evan, you may have recommended this to the members here and non-members, but you mentioned about racism a couple of times in the United States. You ought to sit down and watch Anarchy USA again, because it's the Watts riots and all, but you really see what's the motivation. Nothing's here has changed. The strategy's all the same. Going back to the French Revolution, absolutely the same. I mean, you can almost write the script and here they come again. What happened in Venezuela, same deal. Cuba, same program. I have, when I was in Miami, I had Cuban Birch members, and they said they ripped down the statues, they caused chaos in the streets. They begged for civility and law and order in the streets, and Castro shows up. Absolutely. So they took down the statues and statues of Jesus Christ, and they put statues of Castro, and he worshiped him. Sound familiar? Same old story. And I tell you that because history, just look at history, they played the same old playbook. And people were just scared to death, wanted peace, and they gave away all their freedoms because that's exactly what they wanted to do. They created a problem with the solution in mind.
Yeah, what I'll do is for people that want to watch that, I will share the link in the chat section once I find it. It's on our YouTube page.
Absolutely.
So if you just go to the search
Yep.
link, search area on our John Birch's side YouTube page, you can
Yeah,
download that. So,
it also
yeah,
gives you some history in other countries in Morocco where you've seen other countries fall to communism. So the revolution never benefits the people in the street. They think they're working class, not as opposite effect. It's a game. It's a psychological game to get other people in power because it's a power shift. And once the other guys get in power, you're not going to like it.
one thing you've been working on, Wayne, are these matter of action videos, and they're only available to members who log in
Right.
through the jbs.org website. And
Yeah.
if members are wanting to become, better members, what are they going to get by viewing these videos?
Yeah. So we made them topical, how to have a more productive chapter member. What do you do for how to run speeches effectively? I interviewed lots of other people in the organization to speak about what's happening, current events, lots of different topics. And so, depending on who's there, I varied the menu for the day. So, I interviewed Art Thompson the other day on his China book. So it really depends. And here's Tim Martin, what a development officer does. And most people don't know all the components of the Birch Society. So I just try to make it important to show there are a lot of things that we do. And so that's why I do Matter of Action. Matter of fact, I'm working on now doing a national webinar. It'll start on a Monday, hopefully real soon. And we'll have an update on current legislation for people to listen to, interview coordinators or speakers that we have, topical. I'm going to have a little part about a U.S. history and a little bit about America. And we're going to do that every week, either Monday or Tuesday night. And we'll start that hopefully in the next couple, 3 weeks because it's needed. And we'll do that throughout the United States.
Here's a question we have from Brian Hooper. What is your take on the assault on American history, taking down the statues and so forth? The leftist Sierra Club repudiated its founder, John Muir, today for being a racist. What are the best books to read to combat this on an intellectual level?
Well, we had a magazine in the past. Evan, I can't tell you what it is. This was a feature on there, taking down the statues. Remember that one?
Yes, yeah.
You may want to send that to that individual. But I gave you some of the answers that is it trying to erase your history and they want to replace it with new history. They did that in the Soviet Union, Bolshevik Revolution. They did it in Cuba and Venezuela. They have to clear out your history and give you all brand new history, their history. Of course, you can't have a world order. You can't stick to your old ways and means of your old traditions. They have to wipe that all out, including religion, and replace it with a new state. And that's what's going on. And I gave you history, French Revolution. You go through history, that's exactly what they did. But we have a magazine, a New American Special on the taking down the statues, and it talks about the reasons behind that. And I gave you an overview of why that is. But they have to get rid of your history and disgrace all your founding fathers and everything you ever took value of, including baseball games and sports. You know, got to get rid of all that stuff. You know, you don't need any of that stuff anymore. Hot dogs, Babe Ruth, we don't care about that stuff. We're just going to replace it, we're just going to wipe it all out. And that's really the motive, to destroy the country, its character. And we replace it with a new world order and a new global. Because how can you blend in with the French and the Germans and the Czechoslovakians? You want to talk about baseball? It doesn't make difference to them. You have to wipe that all out. And they're doing the same thing in Europe. It's taking all of their icons of history.
One of my favorite sections in the New American is the history section, where there's always an article that helps remind you of what really happened in history and why it's important to know the truth on what took place then. I think for Brian's question, there's many history articles that can be used to help. I mean, we have a lot of intellectuals, and I explained this to somebody yesterday. You know, when it comes to intellectual discussions, we compete with the libertarians, I would say, because the libertarian, the Koch-funded organizations also work on the people who can speak on an intellectual level. And what a lot of people don't understand is that a lot of the Koch money is used to fund anti-God organizations like the Aspen Institute. You know, they support open borders. And so we are actually competing against, like we are trying to get the CEO of the company, not just the average Joe. We want the average Joe in the John Birch Society, but we're also competing for the young entrepreneur that's 30 years old who just made $1 million inventing, you know, something, you know, outrageously good for people. And so he's, you know, we want to recruit that person to the John Birch Society, and we don't want him to go, well, I must fit in with the Libertarian Party because I like business and I like capitalism, and so then I support this Reason magazine because that's funded by the Koch machine too.
Sure.
But it leads people to an understanding that the Koch machine wants you to believe in, and they want people to believe there's not a God.
Yeah.
And what is the downfall if you're a John Birch Society member and you don't believe that we can do this with God's help? If you don't believe that's necessary, what's the downfall of that, Wayne? Because that's part of our motto: less government, more individual responsibility, and with God's help, a better world.
Yeah. So as you know, the Constitution was formed, and the founding fathers said the Constitution was based on a moral people. You got to have some morality. And we said our rights come from God, right? It said that you can read all of our papers, Federalist papers, they'll tell you that. And the commentary from them. And so you can't wipe out God. It's a very integral part of our country. Matter of fact, the reason why we came here is just for religious freedoms, you know, not economic reasons. So that's our founding, that's our roots. And what happens when you get into that modality of no God, then we base it all on economics, and it doesn't work. It's not solely as a work. You have people, libertarians and Birches? Yes, and they certainly join with us about the freedom movements on liberty for commerce and all. But for me, it's really important to have the religious aspect of our country because it was founded on those principles. I can't unbolt the two together because our rights come from God, not from man, which like the UN does. And I think it's a slippery slope because the libertarians fall sometimes away from their truth because their values are just based on economics at times. I wanted to mention the history portion of the magazine. We have FDR and AAA, and this current magazine of the New American ACQ. The back says, somebody asked the question, topple statues, topple the republic. And Bill Jasper goes through some of the comments about taking down the statues in Venezuela. As I said, it's an old program. But I hope I answered the question about libertarian. It tends to confuse people. But the Birch Society is not a church. So we have members are Mormons, Methodists, Presbyterians, Baptists, the list goes on and on. And our job is not, we're not a church, but we support a moral people based on our Constitution. And we need people like that because they're freedom loving. We're definitely against communism, social and one world government because there's no God at all. As you guys all know, you should all know that. So that's where it heads. That's where it heads. I don't know if I answered your question. I gave a personal answer.
Yeah, that's good. Joe Inglis asked the question, coming in August, a New American Magazine issue will have updated charts that appeared in the 1997 New American outlining the extent of control of the Council on Foreign Relations over our government for decades. He said a reprint will become available. I guess he knows inside information. I don't know how Joe knows this. I'm not privy to it. But a reprint will become available of the charts together with the accompanying article.
Right.
He thinks this will be valuable to us as a recruiting tool.
Yep.
He wants to know which TNA issue it's going to be in August. I don't know if you can answer that, Wayne, but
it's the next one coming out. I'll have it, Joe. So I have the privilege of reading the galley proofs before it goes to press. So I already saw what it looks like. So it's coming at you pretty soon. Probably the next week or two, it'll come out to you.
You know, Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, they never mention the Council on Foreign Relations in negative light. In fact, they're always honored to have Council on Foreign Relations guests on their shows. And for those that watch Fox News, I'm sorry to say, but it's owned by a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, if you have any faith in the Fox News channel. That being said, recruiting people, I think that's one thing that differentiates us as members of the John Birch Society. We are the only group that actually talks about the Council on Foreign Relations. Why do you think that is, and why is it important that we're educated on the topic of the Council on Foreign Relations for recruiting purposes?
Well, as I said earlier, people want to know what's really going on, and I think you have to go to the source. We see, issues in the streets today, in the past as well. We need to know if these are symptoms. We have to know who the creator of it is. So what is the root of the problem? It's not a branch. People get hung up on one of the issues. It might be homeschooling, it may be Second Amendment, maybe whatever. All under attack. It's all under attack by one focus group. In the United States is the CFR. Yeah, absolutely. And of course, you're right. They own a lot of the media, either be printed or public, or it could be on television or a lot of media. And they're never. It's safe for them to hide because they control it all, and so they're going to give you the lousy, well-of-word narrative, and always praise what they're doing, but they're never going to divulge really what their goal is at all. So yes, we're excited about that issue coming out because it hasn't been refreshed in years. But that's what I avoided, Evan, is that it's exposing them. They hate exposure, and so much is written about them. I mean, you got James Perloff's book, Shadows of Power. Art wrote a book about that. Gary Allen Nunder called Conspiracy, and go on and on and on. And we have videos on this stuff. Really important for people in the learning sequence to know who the enemy is. We all know at the end of the day, it's all spiritual, by the way. It's a spiritual battle all day long, but they take the form of CFR members, but it's a spiritual battle. And people have to know, as I mentioned earlier on, what's going on? Who's behind it? I don't understand this. Why would they destroy our country? Is it all about racial issues? Absolutely not. They're using it as a tool to destroy the United States. Have we made mistakes in the past? Absolutely. Was my family here? They weren't even in the United States then. So, but they use those racial divides, political divides, economic divides to destroy the country. And the CFR orchestrates them through all those different areas all the time. School, religion, they attack every one of them. And we go, Birch Society addresses it and points it to them. That's why they either ignore us or they tell lies about us as well.
Yeah, a former CFR member, he's passed away, but Robert Pastor actually blamed the John Birch Society for stopping the progression of the North American Union, which was a
Absolutely.
major what a major thing that the New World Order needs is they need a North American Union. They
Mhm.
need to disintegrate the republic that we live in.
Yeah.
So that's a
I
badge of
want,
honor.
yeah,
Yeah.
I want to add, because I look at our time, I want to add, because this is, because people have asked how you grow and be influential in your chapters. I'll give you an example. The largest amount of members in chapters in the United States is New York City, New Jersey. Can you imagine? That's the largest
Wow.
concentration. And in a lefty, communist-driven, controlled area. And you asked the question, I can't believe that. Well, what's their secret? Are they all nasty, crass New Jersey people? No. Uh, but what they do is they have, as you know, I should mention this before, Evan, they have every month, they have an information action meeting. They have a movie night. And they do it in a, in someone's home, or they do it in a restaurant. And they show a topical movie every month. Every chapter runs an INA meeting. And the chapter leader asks the chapter members to invite one friend. So if there's 10 people in the chapter, now you have 20 people. And out of those 20 people, now 10 are guests, at least one or two join. So now you have 12 people in the chapter. And on it goes, and the chapter gets too big, they split in two. And they have a meal, and they learn things, and they find out they're not alone, and it's an educational piece. And it's very uplifting and motivating. That's one of the key things that drives their growth, is that they go out into the community, invite a friend, and they find out their friend says, geez, I'm not alone. I've been part of those meetings, and I heard, geez, it's really good to see other like-minded patriots, because I thought my wife and I were all alone. I can't say that enough. I heard that so many times, because it said people just want to know, and they don't know we exist. But that's a good forum to grow your awareness and your influence. That easy. That easy. You got another question coming in?
I didn't, but one Jason Kendrick said that's a great idea. It's
It
just
works. I mean, they have the
um,
largest membership, and they have 4 to 6 meetings every other week in their chapters. They have about 35 chapters in the New York area, and they run movies all the time. And now it's limited because some restaurants open up and they find diners, and whatever it is. But they find a place, they have a meal, it's social time, which is really important, and they learn, and they're very excited because they're not alone. I can't say that enough. There's so many people that are potential members, but they don't know you exist. And they want to know what's going on desperately. They want to save our country, and they don't know what to do. They don't even know what the problem is yet.
and the monthly meetings are real important, and we're experiencing right now in some areas of my territory where if people haven't met monthly, it's hard to get them back together to be as strong as they were, because they've lost that cohesiveness, where they
Yeah.
had this every month meeting, and now they've not met for 2 or 3 months, or sometimes I guess 4 months for some of them, and
Yeah.
and the
Zoom meetings work.
importance.
You're a champion of that. Zoom meetings are actually a replacement for that. You can see lots of people. I mean, I had 83
Yeah.
people on Monday night at a Zoom meeting.
Yeah, so the Zoom meetings can actually attract more people in your community. A lot of people who are younger would be more attracted to be
Absolutely.
part of a Zoom meeting, but they're not a replacement for the get-togethers where you have a meal together and meet each other face to face. But I think when this way of doing meetings could actually become more effective. I think they're already becoming more effective in some ways. But when you see something face to face, you have you're more likely to build that trust with somebody by seeing them
Mhm.
face to face, and that's what we should remind all members too. It's this:
Absolutely.
you got to do a little bit of everything, and be versatile as a member, and just know what's in your toolbox, because you're given so many tools to use. It nearly seems endless sometimes, because you have all these tools to use. And if you're retired, if you're no longer working, you could use a lot of the different tools throughout the week if you really wanted to
Yeah.
dig deep and save America. And the key is your local community first, and then get your congressman, to be on your side, and then that's how you win. Is you start local first, and then it builds eventually it's
Yep.
the national.
That's why we got these here. They're talking points, little talking points.
Yeah, and just so everybody knows, on those Slim Jims, you can write your name on there,
Yep, in the
and
back.
and write your name, phone number, email address, and that's a way you could recruit people to where they know who to call once they've received one of those.
Yeah, so here we have the first one. Soviet Union, Vladimir Lenin says the goal of socialism is communism. The first 100 years of communism is responsible for over 100 million deaths, and it talks about this. I'm sure you hear democratic socialism. I mean, it's Bernie Sanders. Yeah? Young kids in the streets, they don't realize they're marching to their own slavery or their own death. They have no idea. They've been so eye-washed. I mean, it's just amazing. They're so brainwashed to what's really happening. But this is a good one to talk about, electoral college. See, these are all topical things to generate discussion. Is it all going to work to everybody? No, but it's a place to start. iNaming works good. We have a website. You can send off articles and videos to people. I sent Evan video links. I sent you a bunch this morning that you can share with friends. So there's lots of information. I gave you the INA meetings, movie nights, very important. People just want to go out and see other people of like-minded. They do exist more than you can imagine.
I did find this will be the last question here. Matthew Hardwick, who's a member in Georgia. Do you think, he's asked, do you think that President Trump is aware of the dangerous implications of the USMCA that has now been passed? I know he is surrounded by special interest plans, but he has outwitted folks like these before,
Yep.
but maybe not now. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. I think my answer is I thought maybe he was totally naive to it. I mean, he's not that stupid. You're right. He's surrounded by a lot of CFR members to keep him on the fence. So I don't know. I just don't know. I want to believe that he doesn't really know, but enough information has been talked about it. But he looks at it as a deal maker, a trade deal. We're going to make money. We're going to grow our organization. We're going to grow the country. He looks at it through those eyes. He doesn't look at it as a threat to freedom. He doesn't see past that. And that's because he doesn't understand it sometimes. He's unpredictable. So my guess is he doesn't really understand fully well, other than it's the deal to make business deals. What are you giving up to get there? I don't think he understands that. Although his dad was involved in the Birch Society way back when, Fred, so he loves America, and I think he's been trained up that way. But I don't know. I just have a feeling he's naive to this to some degree.
Well, we're in campaign season, so that's a great question to ask him. If anybody here gets a chance to ask that question,
yeah.
Maybe get it on video so more people know exactly if President Trump is aware of this or not. And then if he's not aware of it, if you're the person that asks him that question, do your best to educate him at that moment. And the only way you can be equipped to educate him at that moment is by reading John Birch Society material, because we are the only organization in America that has exposed the USMCA.
Right.
So it's sad that that's where we are in America right now, but it's John Birch Society or bust at this time. I mean, we're the only organization that is
That's right.
remaining true to the wisdom that Robert Welch bestowed on us when he formed the John Birch Society back in 1958.
Mm-hmm.
And thanks to the Lord for doing that, making sure that we had somebody like Robert Welch, who was from North Carolina, as most that had the wisdom to form an organization to help save our country. And so thanks everybody for being part of this Birchinar. Thank you, Wayne, for taking part in this. This is recorded. I will put it on our national, or on my personal YouTube page, and I will also put it on the Birchinar podcast for people to listen to. So thanks everybody for joining. And next Wednesday we'll probably do something like this again, and we'll talk about Anarchy USA. That's probably what the discussion will be. So anyways, thanks everybody for joining. God bless you, and I'll talk to you next time.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Evan.